Welcome to Thinking Like a Lawyer, with your hosts Ellie Mistal and Joe Patrice, talking about legal news and pop culture, all while thinking like a lawyer, here on Legal Talk Network.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. Ellie Mistal cannot be with us today, but I have a special guest. I have Kathryn Rubino, also of Above the Law and the host of the Jabo podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? Well, I'm definitely doing better than Brett Kavanaugh right now.
Well, you don't know that since this episode doesn't come out until...
I suppose that's true, but we can say that we're in the middle of testimony during the recording of between Brett Kavanaugh is currently going on right now, and this morning was the testimony of his first accuser, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford.
Yeah, so we're in the midst of that, and so obviously we don't know what's going to happen between now and when this episode comes out because things are moving fairly quickly and we do not broadcast live. That said, I think we can draw some conclusions based on what we've seen so far and just legal conclusions. Frankly, that was what I was more looking toward because let's talk real quick about this morning's testimony. So this morning, Republican senators opted not to ask any questions.
They did not. They handed it all off to Maricopa County prosecutor Rachel Mitchell.
Yeah, but they didn't give her just a block of time. They went back and forth. So she got 5 minutes to ask questions before a senator from the Democratic side of the aisle would speak.
Well, I mean, the issue is that the Republicans wanted a hearing because they felt like they needed to have a hearing but didn't want any actual information to come from the hearing. So they scheduled a rather short hearing to hear Dr. Ford's testimony. I think that it was, if I remember the numbers correctly, it's about half the amount of time and testimony they had scheduled for this allegation than they did in 1991 when Anita Hill came forward with allegations of sexual harassment against Clarence Thomas. So we're talking about half as many minutes to ask questions. And I think that the format that the Republican majority decided upon was tragic for them.
It seemed like it was ill-conceived. I think the logic was, of course, to not have a vision of a number of mostly elderly white men asking questions about this. But instead, what they ended up with was this awkward optics of just sitting there as specters while other people asked questions. And then the questions, though, some of them had come from them. So they included basically all the damage was getting done, but without any of the possible benefit. It was a thing. But
bad. It was bad. And I mean, the other thing, too, is the person that they got, Rachel Mitchell, she's a prosecutor who prosecutes sex crimes. So her job, her day-to-day life is believing victims, is getting victims to testify in courtrooms. So it seemed like an odd choice if you're Republicans. If you actually care about things like the truth of the matter and what happened, maybe this makes sense. But given the format and other sort of tips and hints that we've gotten from the GOP, it doesn't seem like that was really their goal. But, I think that it was put Mitchell in a very awkward position. I think that her last set of questions to Dr. Ford were specific about, the format being problematic. And it seemed as if Mitchell was admitting, this is fucked up. Sorry, you guys, this isn't my fault.
Yeah, it did seem the testimony did end with her making a claim that this seems like a poor format. It seems like a format that did a disservice to what we were working on and that an investigation would have been better, which were all talking points that certainly the other side had been talking more about. I thought that what I found interesting about it is for those people, Ellie, while he was not able to join us today, did tweet throughout most of the day. One of the things he tweeted about that I think he was right about was that there are a lot of people in this world, and this goes back to the episode we had a couple weeks ago where we were talking to the guys who law. People don't understand what cross-examinations actually look like. Sure. They think that it's some Perry Mason type or whatever. Yeah. But what this prosecutor was doing actually was what a good cross-ex would theoretically sound like. The problem is there was no rhythm to it because it was interrupted every 5 minutes. It was punctuated by dumb questions because she had an obligation to read the questions of the senators given to her. When you could tell she was making follow-ups of her own, it actually was very good. Like, you could tell there was a lot of skill involved here. That said, many of those questions where she was able to go off on her own, you kind of got the feeling that her natural instinct of building a criminal case against somebody who had done something rather than denigrating a victim was where her instincts were. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's definitely true. And I mean, listen, she doesn't normally do it in 5-minute increments. And I think that there's a lot of dragging of Mitchell on social media right now, saying what a terrible job she's done, blah, blah, blah. I think that is certainly true in terms of a partisan sense. Her questions did not poke any holes in the fundamental credibility of the witness, which, if you want Brett Kavanaugh to be the next Supreme Court justice, is something you were really hoping for. So I think from that perspective, it was problematic. But the reality is she did a very good job. She's skilled at what she does. This is not her normal, having a partisan role is not something she normally does. And I thought that that's what the last series of questions was kind of meant to illustrate. And I think that I understand, Republicans not wanting to be only men asking questions. Maybe they should have a woman then on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's never in the history of the Senate Judiciary Committee has there been a female Republican on the committee. Let's just let that sink in for a second.
I mean, they try to get women. Yeah, the goal is to get women who are attorneys. And I guess I don't know, of the female Republicans currently in the Senate, I'm not sure how many came at that job from a legal background. I haven't ever looked.
Sure, never though.
But I think that's
not ever.
Obviously, there's generally not as many female Republicans anyway.
I think that's something to be aware of. And they literally got someone whose job it is to believe victims.
Yeah,
it just seemed like an odd choice from a partisan perspective.
Yeah,
and I don't believe they had a truth-finding goal in mind. I think that flies in the face of every other hint that we have from the process.
Social media darling, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, Preet Bharara, tweeted out at the very end that Mitchell closed her questioning by pointing out everything wrong with the way in which the procedure had gone, which he felt was a strong finish, but certainly not one that I think the people who brought Mitchell in could have possibly wanted. I want to talk a little bit about something that caught some Twitter fire for us over here. At one point in the testimony, Senator Klobuchar points out that the doctor had taken a polygraph test, and the results of that showed that she told the truth and entered that into the record. But noted while she did so that all she was entering in the record were the raw results, because the expert who actually is supposed to interpret those results was forwarded as someone to be interviewed by the committee, and that was denied.
Yeah.
So let's take this bit by bit. Polygraph testimony. How do you feel about polygraph evidence?
Well, I think it's pretty problematic personally, but I know what Brett Kavanaugh thinks about it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that jumped way further ahead than the actual question I asked. But it's largely it comes real close to pseudoscience. It's a device that was kind of largely created with work from the guy who created Wonder Woman as a character. So
yes.
Yeah.
I think there's some documentary about Wonder Woman that I've seen that brings that whole thing up. It's
the lasso of truth is because he legitimately believed he could tell if people were lying. So it's this, slightly better than phrenology, maybe, pseudoscience that many people have made over the years a lot of hay explaining how it's not actually reliable, but it does have some evidentiary value. Obviously, people who are telling lies tend not to opt to get one.
Sure.
So there's at least
a risk there if you're lying.
I'm saying there's so there's a bit of a self-selection issue. Like, if you choose to take one, you probably you're indicating that you feel good about your testimony. Anyway, so there's that. Judge Kavanaugh has not taken a polygraph test, which is curious since he's written opinions before about how much.
Yeah. And you've actually done a little bit of research into what he thinks about polygraphs.
He thinks they're great.
Ooh.
He's written opinions.
Twist.
He's written opinions about how he thinks that they are absolutely warranted by government agencies, law enforcement, people making hiring decisions. They should be able to use polygraphs and test them. In fact, in one instance, he made a decision in a FOIA context that an entity shouldn't have to turn over polygraph stuff, including they should not have to turn over any internal diagnostics they have about the quality of their polygraphs, because that might undermine public faith in polygraphs.
Well, because they're fake.
Well, say about that what you will. I'm not necessarily saying whether or not this is good or bad or indifferent evidence, but I do think there's something to be said for the hypocrisy of telling people who are on the losing end of job decisions because they took a polygraph machine that's their fault. Polygraphs are great. And then when confronted with a polygraph against you, refusing to at least, sack up and do it yourself.
Well, I mean, that's a really smart decision if you're not being 100% accurate with the truth, though, right?
Yeah. I mean
it's at least, I understand why these things happen.
Yeah. So I'm taking these weird pauses because, as I said, we timed this a little bit wrong. So we started recording like right at a few minutes into Judge Kavanaugh's opening statement. So we're seeing updates about that as we're talking.
Yeah, I mean, this job, if you weren't already, kind of writing a legal blog during Senate confirmation hearings makes you a social media junkie. I've done more Twittering today than I have in a year.
Tweeting?
Twittering, whatever.
Twittering?
I mean, I think you know what I meant, though, which is the point.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
I mean, I just believe in precision here.
I think that language is flexible and ever evolving.
So
I think that you should be pretty open to these kinds of changes in our lexicon.
I'm a textualist.
No.
So
if only you were.
So so we're getting updates as things go. Apparently he just went on a tear about that Renate Alumnus Club allegation.
Amazing.
It's come across so far badly for him in a lot of different ways, I feel.
He began his opening statement very red and angry and screaming, which I think is the opposite image than most people have of sober as a judge. He came across as whatever you imagine the opposite of that to be.
Yeah.
Which, take the actual truth of the allegations out of it for a second and just look at those optics, doesn't look great for him.
Yeah, it strikes me. So I recently rewatched Clarence Thomas's high-tech lynching statement.
Sure.
Just because I had some feeling like this might be relevant to me in the near future.
Smart move.
And he's very angry, obviously, that it is a very forceful and angry speech, but it is nonetheless a measured speech. Mm-hmm. He says he's angry about this. This isn't true. Move on, kind of. But he comes across, rightly, wrongly, whatever. He comes across very measured and a judge. He seems like a judge who you have you've gone into contempt in front of him and he's mad.
Sure.
This, at least as it began, and obviously it's still going, as it began, it did not begin that way. It began wildly angry, yelling.
Unhinged.
Jumping into conspiracy theories.
Yep.
He didn't say George Soros, but he was real close to saying that some crazy left-wing billionaire was paying for everything, which, from my perspective, it struck me that somebody in this process should have, he said that no one had looked at his statement, but one of his clerks. It seems like somebody else should have looked at his statement before he went off on this. Because from my perspective, even if you're saying you want to show that you don't believe these allegations and argue them, sure, maybe. And maybe as an argument to those, this is compelling. But as a statement that you are not the sort of person who becomes violent with people,
yes,
that you are not
violent.
Somebody who is all over the place, that you are not somebody who is so in the tank for partisans that you clutch at straws and believe in conspiracy theories, all those other complaints people have raised about him were just doubled down upon.
Yeah. And just to kind of tack back slightly to your point about comparing and contrasting Clarence Thomas's statement with what we're seeing now in Judge Kavanaugh's opening statement, I also think that there's something that is played out very differently in 1991 than now, which is the way that race plays a role here. I think that Clarence Thomas was very aware that he cannot be an angry black man and still be a Supreme Court justice.
At least in 1991. Definitely 1991.
Especially 1991. I think he was
Strom Thurmond was on that panel.
Yeah, I think he was very aware of the optics that race was playing in his confirmation proceedings. And I think that race was also used to Anita Hill's detriment. I think that a lot of her stoicism and what I perceived as class in answering a lot of those questions came across not as sympathetic to a lot of the white people who are watching. And I think that has been very much in contrast with what's going on, and also this morning with Christine Blasey Ford's testimony. But, to kind of make a perfect comparison between them, I think is a little bit inaccurate unless you really account for the way that race obviously played a role in those two situations.
That race dynamic is fascinating, actually. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I definitely think there's something different. And I also think, but to your point about kind of a stoic response, the measured response, it feels as though there's been a break from 1991 till now on the side of as far as the strategy of I don't want to make it sound like strategy. Obviously, these people are telling their stories. But on the presentation of the victims, while there's also a race dynamic, there's also a perhaps trying to be as, not seem weak that Anita Hill might have done was probably a poor decision. And there was much more, why don't you just tell your story unfiltered without us trying to micromanage it? Like I think a lot of people think happened to Anita Hill, where there was a lot of, trying to make it look right. And this was more unfiltered. Whereas what happened on the other side was being angry worked for Thomas. You try your version of angry. And that going to the same playbook seems to have failed on that part.
I think that's true. And I think the other difference in terms of if you're comparing and contrasting Anita Hill's testimony with Christine Blasey Ford's testimony, I think the other difference is the impact that the Me Too movement has had. I think that over, the last 18 months or so, the prominence and amount of stories that people have heard about sexual assault and sexual harassment and sexual misconduct generally has made the average listener more comfortable hearing some of the pain and anguish that goes on when people are victimized. And I think that has also played a part of it. But, again, I'm not discounting any measure that race played a big role in how Anita Hill was perceived in 1991 and how the response to Ford's testimony has been overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. I think the worst thing that a Republican has been able to say about it is she's not credible.
Yeah, well, no, Lindsey Graham said worse, but yes, John Cronin said she's not credible. To go back to how Mitchell handled this cross for the people who may not have seen crosses before, I feel like a good example of it followed the regular playbook of these sorts of cases. A lot of focus on not remembering specific details. Obviously, the traumatic event is going to be the thing you remember more than anything surrounding it. However, part of the strategy here is you ask questions about little details that aren't there in a way to create doubt in people's minds that she's not the perfect victim, like some weird platonic ideal that people have of that. And that certainly went down that road. Those were the sorts of questions that happened. I just feel like, at least as you said, what we're seeing from people reacting to it is that most folks have started to realize that maybe that's okay. Maybe it's not inconsistent to say that I remember somebody attacking me 36 years ago and I don't remember what song was on the radio 36 years ago. That kind of memory operates differently, which is a thing that for years was utilized. I remember the William Kennedy Smith rape trial in the 90s. That strategy was used by Roy Black to great effect. You don't remember this. You don't remember what color this was. You don't remember that. And that was a time where people took that as reasons to not believe. Whereas now I think people are more attuned to the idea that it's possible you remember certain things at different levels of magnitude.
I think that's true. And I do think as kind of a society, we've become a little bit more sophisticated about the way that we understand sexual assault and sexual misconduct. But the other thing is I think that the Democrats handled it very well in terms of their questionings. They just admitted into record studies that said sexual assault survivors are likely to have gaps in their memory. Sexual assault survivors, all these kind of scientific studies and data points that proved, that Ford's testimony falls in line with truthful testimony of sexual assault. And I think that they handled it well in a very matter of fact, well, of course that this is true. Now tell us what you remember. What's the, one of the most powerful moments in the testimony was when Ford was asked what was the one thing she remembered most vividly from that evening. And she talked about hearing Kavanaugh and Judge laughing. And I think that, we're able to speak very poignantly about the moment she remembers. And, Democrats just kind of putting into the record, well, science says, of course, he's not going to remember it all. Yeah. Of course. Right. It seems very matter of fact. I think it becomes very easy to understand for the casual observer.
Yeah. And we saw also, I'm just going to put this in as a personal level. So we saw in both the questioning this morning briefly and in Kavanaugh's opening statement, the return of Ed Whelan's bonkers theory. Ed Whelan, the National
crazy pants.
For until, I think he might be on some kind of a leave of absence, but the National Review's legal reporter over last week put out a bunch of stuff about how he'd been on Zillow and he had figured out that she doesn't remember Brett Kavanaugh. She remembers somebody else. And he's figured this out because somebody else had a floor plan in their childhood home, according to Zillow, the better matched.
And I mean, that's something that we see.
Yeah.
We literally see Kavanaugh doing right now, right? He said, I don't doubt that she might have been sexually assaulted by someone at some time, but it certainly wasn't me.
He brought up the houses. He started talking about Zillow. He said, talked about floor plans and everything. And it's clear that wherever Whelan got his insane theory, which has resulted in him being ostracized even by his right-wing allies, and now being forced to take a leave of absence from his job. What I learned today, basically, is that Kavanaugh was the source of all of this.
For sure.
He clearly believes the exact same theory, and he outlined it. So that was but watching Ed Whelan embarrass himself was funny, because he is an utterly humorless idiot.
But I mean, compare and contrast the way that hit and in this kind of pulling at straws conspiracy theory and how it's been perceived versus the utter clarity with which Ford testified. She was asked point blank, with what degree of certainty are you sure that it was Brett Kavanaugh who did this to you? And she said 100%. And she was utterly believable in that moment, clear as a bell. And I think that is going to play a lot better and a lot stronger than pulling up a map and a Zillow floor plan ever will.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, by the time this episode comes out, we'll probably have...
know one way or the other.
we'll probably have known one way or the other how this played. But it is interesting just to break down from the legal perspective, how certain things are just... I mean, that's what's insane to me is the judge is the one grasping at weird circumstantial evidence, whereas the doctor is not.
He seems like a bad judge right now.
I mean, it's just weird. There's so many more guarded ways to go about this. I feel like this is untrue. You can say the questions, the poke holes by not remembering this, not remembering that, perfectly. That's not perfectly, but that's the playbook for proving something wrong. Going off on weird second gropers from behind the grassy knoll that lived in different
similar
Zillow houses. Yeah, that just undermines any level of credibility that I think he had.
He doesn't seem serious anymore. Separate and apart, if you're able to, and I don't begrudge anyone who can't do this, but if you're able to somehow take away the accusations themselves, and let's be clear, it's not just one woman who's come forward at this point. There have been three.
Multiple, yeah.
But kind of just putting a pin in that for a moment, he does not comport himself as you would like a Supreme Court justice to comport themselves in moments of stress. Period.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah. That's the big takeaway from this is just the weird legal team meltdown that led to.
Man, I wish I could be a fly on that wall. How did this prep session go?
Yeah. Was there one?
How do you not have one? Are you a bad lawyer too? Because lawyers prepare. That's what you're trained to do.
Usually.
Well, yeah, you would think. And if there was was there a prep session? Was there never a prep session? Who's in charge of this train? Because I know what it's coming at, and it's all terrifying.
Yeah, because if you're the Republicans, you have to, but if you're Kavanaugh's camp, you have to assume that your audience are the handful of 4 potentially defecting Republican senators.
Sure.
And what about this is designed to appeal to them?
Zero. Nothing about what he's said so far has been geared towards Collins.
I mean, I guess maybe you're aiming for Manchin and Donnelly on the grounds of trying to convince their constituents that it's a vast conspiracy paid for by George Soros. I think Christine Blasey Ford was too compelling for that to work. Yeah, I mean, my prediction, obviously we'll know one way or the other, is that the 3 jeopardized red state Democrats are going to utilize what happened and jump all on the our wives and daughters canard, which
is problematic.
Which is very problematic. Rape shouldn't be a bad thing just because you might have a daughter.
Sure, it's because they're people.
Yeah, because they're actually people.
Yeah. Let's treat women like people. But then
But that I think is going to be the tack they take with their constituents is I listened to somebody who could have been my wife or daughter,
very compelling,
and that's going to be how they go.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But so, yeah, then at that point, your real audience has to be the Republicans. And
I don't know. I think that this is problematic. I think there are too many qualified other Republican judges out there that would do just as much harm to Roe v. Wade as Kavanaugh will. And as a matter of like kind of, rational actor kind of theory, I don't understand the play of letting this go to a vote.
Right. I mean, well, what I've said about this is I don't understand. If there's an argument that you want to get it done before the midterms, makes sense. Sure. You probably are going to win the midterms, the Republicans are, for the Senate, just because of the map. But you might not. So you're worried. Get it. Totally understandable. But this is the point where, norms are gone at this point. So why not yank this guy, turn around to one of the judges who has just gone through a confirmation hearing within the last year, say, we've already had a confirmation hearing with this exact same constituent Senate, with the exception of McCain, who's been replaced by a Republican, so it should be the same. We're just going to choose one of them. We'll have a vote tomorrow. We don't need any more hearings. Now, that's a breach of norms, but at this point, norms don't matter. Like,
it's better than this debacle that's going on right now.
You just call Joan Larson, who got 60 votes in her confirmation, and say, we already know. You do that.
Are
and then
10 people really going to turn?
Yeah,
11, yeah.
All of these people voted already, so you've got pressure on them. Well,
what's changed?
What's changed? That's how you get Joe Manchin votes for it one time. Why is he voting against it this time? That's pressure. That actually works. I don't understand why they didn't just do that. Hey, the only answer, well, it's not even win, because that would be a win too. I think it really is. There's a deep-seated, we got to do everything to own the libs. Like, just whatever it is that makes more liberal people mad is an end in of itself. And, more power to them. If I were them, I would do whatever it took to get the path of least resistance to get the vote I want on the court.
Yeah, if I were a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, I'd be like, I don't care. We need that vote on the court tomorrow before the midterms.
Yeah.
We just need to get this done. As soon as it started looking like it was going belly up, pull it immediately, pull the ripcord, get Joan Larson, get Thapar in there, get somebody else in there, and take the vote. I'm glad they haven't done that, I suppose, for my personal politics, but it doesn't make sense if you're just game theorying this out.
Yeah, time for a little game theory. So on that note, we should close up and get back to this. I see from my computer screen here that people are starting to ask questions.
Woo!
So read Above the Law. Follow us. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Kathryn1, spelled Kathryn 1 at Twitter. You should give reviews to this podcast, stars, write things. That helps us get discovered by more people. Listen to the other offerings of the Legal Talk Network. And while not on the Legal Talk Network, Kathryn's show, The Jabot. And that's everything. So we'll be back to you very soon. Bye.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. You can also find us at AboveTheLaw.com, ATLRedline.com, iTunes, RSS, Twitter, and Facebook. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.